Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Time and Change Will Surely Show. I'm Tony Gerdeman here with Juck Miletti as we discuss the past, present, and future of Ohio State through one particular topic. And I guess as we're discussing the past, present, and future of Ohio State, the topic that we're choosing this week is the Michigan football program. So we'll actually be talking more Michigan than Ohio State, but also, don't worry, plenty of Ohio State. And as we like to do with these episodes, let's get some background, Juck. When did you really start to become aware of the rivalry, and what was it like growing up, whenever you did, with that rivalry?
So, my family, Italian Catholic family, Catholic school, were majority Notre Dame fans, and I was an Ohio State fan, not as a way to rebel against them. It just felt natural to me to root for the guys that said Ohio, and I didn't get the whole Notre Dame deal. So I want to say I was probably 10 years old or so when the rivalry really became like part of, because I had a neighbor who they went down, they had season tickets, and I kind of got schooled by him and his family as to everything when I was younger, which is where I watched a lot of the games growing up. So thank goodness for them, because in one different change, and I could have been a Notre Dame guy sitting here with the leprechaun behind me. Who knows, Tone? But yeah, 10 years old, and then kind of, well, that would have been like 91, and from there through my high school years, it ended in about 98. Were spent the majority of the time over there with my neighbors when they weren't at the game. So that is kind of my background on it.
Yeah. So yeah, similar story for me as well. I grew up in Northwest Ohio, which, if you're not from there, there's a lot of Michigan fans there. Didn't have a bunch of Michigan fans growing up in the schools, when I was going to school, but you could always tell who they were in terms of the kids, not counterculture, but as you said, like the rebelling against you, against whatever the family or the local school is. So they were those kinds of people where they don't even really care.
And they didn't know football either. Yeah, never.
Right. At 100%. They just did it kind of for a reaction. And so you couldn't even really necessarily engage with them, but they'd love to engage with you after a Michigan win, believe me. And it was always just like the challenge would be like, name 5 players. Give me 5 people on your team that you know. And they would have like a quarterback and then maybe somebody else. And you'd be like, no, that guy stars on Days of Our Lives. You're just throwing names out. But then, you grow up and you go through it, and it just becomes a part of you. And it's like, I remember I didn't watch all of the games, even when I was well aware of it, because they weren't all great to watch, because this was the late 80s where Ohio State was not doing so well with them. But we'd have the game on, and we'd go out and play football and then come back and see what the score was and be like, let's go back out. I've seen enough already. But then, you get to college and or you grow up and you get older, and then it's just a thing that you get to experience every year. And Jim Tressel brought a lot of happy years to a lot of people, and somewhat continued, but there's some angst going on in the last few years. And so with all of this rivalry talk, I wanted us to go ahead and kind of list some rivalry killers in this. And I've tasked you with coming up with the Wolverine Killers from Ohio State. I guess, whether this is that you've seen your lifetime, give me a name on your list that immediately comes to mind, or that made your list.
So, sometimes when we do this, you come up with a formula, and I've got so many memories. It was tough for me to break this down. So I decided, why don't I go with a formula, and I put one together. So 40% of the grade, number one, is wins. You got to win the game, because we've seen some amazing performances against them, but in a losing effort, it's just hard to take much away from it, other than a great individual performance, but it didn't do much in the end, and I was miserable for a whole year after it. So how much could I really have enjoyed it? So 40% win, 25% individual production, 25% importance in magnitude of maybe the signature play you might have made during the game. And then 10% for me is an Ohio bonus. Did you play high school football in Ohio? Because that to me makes just the cut above there.
Mm-hmm.
And my number 5 guy on my list does not even reach that threshold. A Texas high school football player who was 3-0 against Michigan, and that is J.K. Dobbins. And Ohio State won by a combined score of 149-77 in his 3 wins. First 2 performances solid. Third one was amazing. 211 yards, 4 touchdowns, 56-27 whooping at kind of the height of the absolute drubbings. And he was lost his shoe. Yeah, got his shoe ripped off, but a total Michigan killer in the big house with 4 touchdowns. And that one was one that really stands out in some games that just kind of stand out for, those games for me, Tony, they're not enjoyable experiences. They never have been. It's the longest game of the year every year. I can't wait for it to end because I just want the result.
Yeah.
And it is the lead ups like that, like playing a game at night. Yeah, it'd be cool, but I'm not waiting all day. I can't deal with that anxiety. So let's play at noon and let's make the clock go as fast as possible. Like that's the way I enjoy that game. The faster, the better. And when the Buckeyes can win that game big and make me feel at ease, like JK did that year, you get extra bonus points. So I got JK number 5.
Yeah, and 2 catches for 49 yards in that game as well. I did not put a formula together for the other side of this because I felt if I spent too much time on it, people would get angry. So, but I think, and frankly, it was difficult to find 5 guys because I know people will say, well, Desmond Howard this and Desmond Howard that. And it's like he had a punt return in a game that Michigan was leading in the second quarter of a game that Michigan was leading that they ended up winning comfortably. So, like, other than that, he didn't really do much. I was thinking, like, what about like Will Johnson? Had a good game against Marvin Harrison, but that was about it. I don't even have a number 5 because Donovan Edwards, for instance. Everybody talks about Donovan Edwards and the career that he had against Ohio State. In his Ohio State career, he did rush for 266 yards. 160 of those came on 2 carries at the end of one of those games.
Yeah.
And his other 35 carries went for 106 yards. So like the rest of his career against Ohio State outside of those 2 carries went for 3 yards. And I'm saying all of that to say I'm going to put Brian Greasy number 5 because to me, he was always in my college days, it felt like he was the guy that would come in and save Michigan or just keep Michigan on top while they had their quarterback rotation with like, I don't know, Scott Dreisbach or whomever. But I just remember after I graduated thinking, like, this Brian Greasy, like, how do you just having this feeling like Brian Greasy was just so annoying growing up in this because it's like he wasn't great. He was just good enough and he was good against Ohio State at times.
He was so annoying listening to his dad call his games and call him Brian. Like Brian, I mean, it was so flipping annoying, dude. I couldn't stand it. That was something that really that became a thing at school with me and my buddies. Brian. But yeah, the thing is when we talk about big plays, man, because the Donovan Edwards thing, like I wouldn't have guessed that, Tony. I'd have thought that he had much better, aside from those big runs, because those big plays in that game stand out so much and they mean so much in that game that it certainly feels to me like Donovan Edwards just had a great time against Ohio State, but 35 carries for 106 yards, not so much. Moving on to number 4 for me, a Missouri running back, Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott, 3-0 against Michigan. 2014, Buckeyes in the lead in the second half, but it's close. And 44-yarder to make it 42-28, effectively end the game. And then in 2015, coming off of the Sparty game where he did not get the ball, the loss, it was horrible, just a gut-wrenching week. And leading into that game, which, I think everybody felt Ohio State was going to win and win big. And, he kind of went nuts that game. 30 carries, over 200 yards, and they beat him down. But Zeke coming off that game with the attitude that he had, that was an especially, it was like the season was over, which is what it was back then. And it was just a cathartic victory. And that's one that stands out that I'll remember a lot.
And that was a pick 'em. The line on that one was even, and they went in and went to Michigan, won 42-13. And that 2014 game, when Cardale Jones comes in, and it's a one-score game, and people are a little bit nervous, and then, as you said, Ezekiel Elliott breaks it for 42 or 44 yards and ends the game. Like, yeah, I can. If he's only fourth on this list, it sounds like a pretty good list. I wonder who could ever be number one on this list. Gosh, I have no idea who it might be. The fourth guy on my list, I'm going to go ahead, and the problem with this list is that so many of these guys just did it 1 year, and whereas you're throwing out the two guys that you've got so far did it 2 years and 3 years, and I'm going to go with. I guess I'll go with Chris Perry, who in 2003, just 31 carries, 154 yards, 2 touchdowns, 5 catches, 55 yards. And after every carry would get up like he is just like he's on death's door and he's on his last leg. And he would just help me up. Like, remember watching the offensive lineman carrying Byron Leftwich from snap to snap. It was basically like that, like fullback picking him up and a left tackle picking him up. And then he'd go ahead and get the ball and run for 7 more yards and drop down, and they'd have to come out and resuscitate him and clear. And then he'd carry the ball again. It's like, once they come out and they put the paddles to you, you should have to miss a snap.
Yeah.
And he never did. And it was a 1 year thing, but man, 2003 to kind of end the Jim Tressel run of 2 years and just remind people that Michigan is still here. They've not gone away quite yet, though they would go away after that.
That's a good one. That dude was so annoying. We'll go to my number 3. My personal favorite Ohio State running back of all time. And I came up with a lot of running backs here in my list because apparently my formula really liked running backs. But this running back from my city, such a skinny young fella that he was nicknamed String Bean by his older brother, Chris Beanie Wells, number 28 for the Buckeyes, 3-0 against Michigan. Obviously, he gets that 10% Ohio high school bonus. A Garfield legend, a high school that no longer exists here in Akron. Beanie was built for this rivalry. And he was just one of those dudes that's more physical as the game goes on. That run as a freshman, that 52-yarder, was, to me, sometimes you have plays in this rivalry where it's a young guy that is just gets you so excited for the rest of his career. And when he popped that one, it was like, we got a star. We got a star. And to this day, I think he is maybe the least talked about, most underrated Ohio State back. So Beanie, definitely number 3 on my list. 39 for 222 and a couple of touchdowns, I think, in 2007. And the following year, another 100-yarder, just a total Michigan killer. He was such a load. He was so nimble on his feet. He's so fun to watch. And he was a bad dude, man. You didn't want any of him.
That 2006 run, I remember watching it at a buddy's house, and probably 8 or 10 of us in the room, and he makes that spin move and he takes off, and the place just goes crazy. Because to me, I wrote it at the time for the Ozone. It's like, I think that's the greatest run I've ever seen, because it came out of nowhere. They made a guy miss. It's a huge game, gets to the end zone. And we all knew he was going to be really, really, really good. He was a 5-star running back.
Number 1 in the country. Yeah.
Right. And like beyond prototypical size, right? He's like 6'2", 225. And looked, I remember the first time I talked to him, and it's like, he looked like a defensive end, basically.
Tony,
And
Tony, you were
yeah,
not looking up at him. Tony.
well, no, you're right. No, you're right. But he had cleats on.
Tony's like
Um,
6'4", 6'5", if you guys didn't know.
Bigger than life, Beanie Wells. I know he's not going to make your list, but I honorable mention to Antonio Pittman
Oh, yeah.
for sealing the game in 2005, for going over 100 yards in 2006. Another very underrated dude. And
Another Akron boy as well.
yeah, and I'll stop saying running backs in case one of them makes your list that you still have yet to go. My number 3, I guess I will go with. I'm going to go with Jim Harbaugh here, and I don't have all of his numbers. I just know he predicted a win, played well enough. It's like back in those days, you complete 8 of 17 passes and you rush for 42 yards, and you manage the game and you do well enough. And he was just a pain. He was annoying. He was mobile, and he also, I forget which year it was. It was in Ohio Stadium. There was a rule back then that if the crowd was too loud, there would be a flag thrown. If the quarterback couldn't, if the players couldn't hear the quarterback, you get a delay of game. Then after that, there'd be like 5 yards. I should have gone back and looked at the box score to see how many times this was called. Felt like 3 or 4, but of course the Ohio State crowd is going to be going crazy and loud. And then Jim Harbaugh was like, everybody's like, can't hear, throw the flag. Come on, what are we doing? So like that sort of stuff. It's almost like
Kind of precursor there.
almost. I mean, it seems. Hadn't really thought about that, but you might be onto something there. But Jim Harbaugh, number 3 on that list.
I don't know if the audience is going to like that selection, Tony. My number 2 is, look, 4-0 against Michigan was Mr. JT Barrett. And as a quarterback, a pure quarterback, I was certainly in the camp towards the end of his career that I was ready to get, I wanted to see a change. I wanted to see some change. But you can't take away from him that he was the quarterback of those teams. And even though he struggled mightily in 2016, like 105 yards passing or something, it was just not good. He also had some good ones too. Led the Buckeyes to a comeback in 2017. And the 4-0 is 4-0. And obviously a great Buckeye, great leader. So I got him at number 2.
Yeah, this is one that he was mobile. He was tough. Like he went into that 2017 game with a knee that kept popping out, and he just kept playing until he could no longer play. And it was so funny. It's hilarious to watch his knee pop out, but like the last time it happens, it's like he's getting up and he's trying to put it back in, and he's like, "Uh-oh, it's not going back in." And the fact that he was going to put it in and then just stay out there is a testament to his will to win, his toughness, his pain threshold, and of course his desire to beat Michigan. And he had some very, very good games, very big plays against Michigan. But like you said, if you're around for so long, eventually, you kind of, I don't want to say outgrow your welcome, but
true.
it's like
it really is.
People want to see something new.
Yeah.
And they kept seeing the same thing with JT Barrett, and all it did was, as you said, 4-0 against Michigan. Ho hum. Another honorable mention, shout out to Carlos Hyde, who had 2 really good games against Michigan. Did he make your anywhere on your top 10 list or anything like that? Or
he was in my honorable mentions, which I have a few.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm with you definitely with Los. And also, what a really, really fun, underrated Ohio State running back for sure.
We'll eventually do a show on that. The underrated running backs or underrated players, because man, there's been a lot of good ones.
Oh yeah.
We were just talking about one on the Buckeye Insiders board the other day about Raymont Harris, number 34, Carlos Hyde, number 34 as well. The
Oh
number two player, yeah, the number two player on my list is Timmay. I was there for this one. 313 rushes, 313 yards on 37 carries, one touchdown, and it was just relentless. And it's not like there was a bunch of 50-yarders. There was just, a 12-yarder, a 13-yarder, a 7-yarder, an 8-yarder, a 9-yarder. It was like, imagine watching the 2007 Illinois game and Juice Williams just keeps picking up every, like, 37 times Juice Williams. That's what this felt like. And I was in the end zone for this one as a student with other Ohio State students, and we're just kept watching Timmay. It seemed like every drive was coming our way, and it's like there was nobody ever in front of him. It's like, what in the world is going on? That one was a frustrating one, but again, another just kind of one-hit wonder.
I mean, not only like a one-hit wonder, but like I remember being like, who is this guy? I don't even know this guy. And it's one thing when you gear up for the game and you know who their star players are, and you're like, well, how are we going to stop Desmond? You know what I mean? Like, who is this dude? How do you say his name? Yeah, man, that was a tough watch, buddy. That was one of those where you're just like, fire everybody. You all need to be fired. Like you're all gone. But tough one there. Obviously, everybody knows who number one is. And I think that the fact that everybody knows who number one is so incredible in the history of this rival that there somehow is a guy who is a definitive, unarguable number one. Like that is what makes Troy Smith so incredible. And, the ultimate Michigan killer. I don't know if we'll ever see anything like it. The era that it happened plays so much into it, kind of like retaking the dominance over in the rivalry. The bowl stampede, like when you see that in your head, it's just like chills. Obviously, we could run down his accomplishments. We all know what he did. And they were just huge stakes games as well. Like, the stakes of the games, the era that it took place in. You got the bonus Ohio football player in my stats. I mean, it had everything. It had theatric plays. It had it all, and just amazing stuff.
How far away? Like how much of a lead did he have over number two?
Huge for me. Like personally, because this was a lot of this was done. I don't know about you, how you feel about this, but there are so many times when we've done lists like this, and I've done them before, where JT Barrett, like for instance, we had JT Barrett as the all-time greatest player when we did a statistical thing in one of our stats. There are so many times when JT Barrett is like this reluctant entry on a list that I do. And it's not because I don't love the guy. I just don't think he was a great player. And there's so many great players that have played at Ohio State. Great players. And Troy Smith and JT Barrett, to me, there's a massive gap between those two. Even in their performances against Michigan and maybe in the feel of those. Obviously, there was a couple of big ones for JT, but just Troy's era and everything about it was it's unmatchable. It's unmatchable. But my first honorable mention would be Mike Doss for a similar, like the era and what was going on, and the upset delivering on Tressel's 310 days speech, and Doss was just a mad dog that day. So Doss, one of my honorable mentions.
And Terrell Pryor got to play against the 2008, 2009, 2010 Michigan Wolverines. So he had some good games. He was 3-0, but he played against Rich Rod, so it doesn't really only count so much. But Troy Smith, 2004, first year as a starter, half a year as a starter, 241 yards passing, 145 yards rushing, and magical. 2005 brought them back from 9 down and like within the last 5 minutes, throws for 300 yards, rushes for another 37 and a touchdown. Then 2006, the game of the century type thing, 316 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, and was just incredible. And that's why when we did our quarterback show, it surprised me that he finished number 2 for both of us, behind Justin Fields, if I recall, and it was because of the Michigan stuff.
Mhm.
So like this stuff carries weight, and just as there was a no doubter number one for Ohio State, there's a no doubter number one for Michigan, and that's Charles Woodson, who even as a true freshman in 1995 had an interception. He held Terry Glenn to 4 catches for 72 yards, long of 25, and that was the year Terry Glenn won the Biletnikoff. Like 17 touchdowns, 1,500 yards, and basically held to half of his average in against Michigan. In that 95 game, Woodson had 2 interceptions, 7 tackles. In 96, he had 9 tackles, held David Boston to 3 catches for 68 yards. One of those was a 56-yarder. Actually, that was 97 when Boston had that long catch and did the taunting. That was really the only play that he had. Woodson in that same game in 97 had a 37-yard catch, 78-yard punt return, and also, an interception. So, like, he was 3-0 against Ohio State, 95, 96, 97, key in all of those games. And it's crazy that an Ohioan, so remove some of those bonus points.
-10 bonus point.
But the contrast between him and like Desmond Howard in broadcasting, I think is pretty stark, because I like Charles Woodson does not seem like he's not trying to be a villain. He will be very matter of fact at times, and you may not like it, but he's not playing a role, and he's one of the great villains in this rivalry, but also I think commands a lot of respect as well.
I'd have to agree. He's certainly not someone like, when I think of him, hatred comes to mind. And as much as I try not to let like trolls get under my skin, man, Desmond Howard does it every time. It really, really works. It really, really works. I mean, it goes to like me whining to myself, like, how does ESPN let him get away with this? You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, totally agree. Yeah. Clear number one, no doubt about it. And I guess to my Troy point, it's double crazy. There's a definitive number one on both sides.
Yeah.
That's really wild for all the great players on both sides of it that have come through. What is no surprise, of course, is that both of them are from Ohio. Like, that's not a surprise at all. No doubt about that. How about Chick Harley for an honorable mention? The first Ohio State win, and the compliment from what the hell's his name, Tony? Their first guy, not Fritz Chrysler, the other one.
Oh, yeah.
Their guy, their first big time coach. His name is escaping me. Came over into the locker room afterwards to tell him what a stud
Fielding Yost,
to tell everybody what a unbelievable player Chick Harley was in the Buckeyes' first win, and that was one of the biggest games in school history, maybe the biggest game for certain to that point, and probably stayed that way for a long time. So definitely an honorable mention to him, as well as AJ Hawk, who was 3-0 as a guy who was a starter in the game and had some big time games for sure. And then everything after that, obviously a ton of one-hit wonders that you love their performance in that one year, but there's too many that had multi-years to really put them up there. So Big Vern up there.
Yeah. Michigan guy.
Yeah. One of the few, him and Krenzel that did some work. So that's what I got, T.
I will say, in terms of the being annoyed by Desmond Howard, that's a feature, not a bug. That's kind of the point. Moving to the present, then we spent some time with some Michigan players and Kyle Whittingham at Big Ten Media Days. So I'm wondering how you think the present tense of Michigan is going to go this year. I did think it was interesting, Kyle Whittingham saying, don't read too much into the spring game for Bryce Underwood because the offensive line was all mixed up, and I get that, and sure, and that's probably true, and we're not basing everything we see on a spring game. It's just it was disappointing that the guy that we saw in the spring was the same guy that we saw in the season. But when he says you're going to see a lot of what we did with Devin Dampier last year, Dampier, the quarterback at Utah, rushed for like 800 yards, and they used him a lot in that way. And I don't know, when you hear something like that, do you think that fits Bryce Underwood? Because he can run, but that's a lot of wear and tear.
So we'll start with the spring game comment that he made. And I actually just did a whole show on those two, Underwood and Whittingham, that I just got done recording, because I just had so many notes from the two of them, listening to them. And that one really stood out to me because Tony, he brought it up.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody else brought
Yeah.
it up. Nobody else said, boy, he really sucked in the spring game. Like, he brought it up and said, look, I know this guy sucked in the spring game, but here's why. The problem I have, and it's true, we obviously know the spring game, we've seen a ton of terrible performances from great players at Ohio State who went on to have great seasons. The thing is, when you finish the year the way he finished the year with a 5-7 touchdown to interception ratio, with your feet all over the place but up underneath you when you're throwing the ball, and then we see you after spring with now your new staff and your quarterback coach, and it looks the exact same, that's when I have to start to wonder, maybe there is more to this.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't know how much I believe that this guy is a guy that is extremely fixable in his delivery and his mechanics. And if it's not something that, like, when things just aren't perfect, it just gets a little scrambled in his melon, and he just, he's all over the place.
He is, and the launch angles and the whether it's from and the shoulder angles, just things are all over the place. And we didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express, but it's like we've seen a lot of quarterbacks and what looks right and what doesn't. And some of his passes, he's got a really strong arm, but the delivery will force some of those passes to float, and the accuracy is not there, and the footwork is kind of wonky. But like I think making him like a Devin Dampier, and Dampier runs about 10 times a game, 10, 12 times a game. That will certainly make him dangerous. And he could absolutely put up, 600 to 800 yards rushing and throw for 3,000, 2,500 to 3,000. I just don't know if he wants to do that in terms of that's how he views himself. Because he certainly views himself as a passer first, who can run. But he ran about 80 sometimes last year for three or 400 yards. So it's there. I just don't know if he wants to do that all game long over the course of a season.
I would agree. I think that, if I'm Whittingham, that's the best way to win for me, is to, and, Michigan fans were irritated about last year, Sharon Moore kind of reining him in, not letting him go be a playmaker with his feet. He still ended up, he rushed for about 400 yards, same as Mendoza, and he should be rushing for more yards than Mendoza. So I think that if I'm Whittingham, and boy, he staunchly defended that stance too, didn't he? He was talking and saying, if you're not running the quarterback, you're missing the boat. Talking +1. He sounded like Urban 20 years ago.
Yep.
But old habits die hard. I just don't know, and I do agree that Bryce sees himself as more of a pocket passer, but I think that's their best way to win. And if they can get 800 yards out of him and he stays healthy, I think they'd be pretty dangerous.
Yeah, I agree. It's just defensive coordinators hate dealing with a quarterback that can run, and it's just one more thing to worry about. One of the things that Whittingham said also, that a good running game will help.
Yeah, for sure.
Bryce Underwood a lot, and I like the pieces that they've got there with Jordan Marshall and Savion Hyder. I think that's a pretty good 1-2 punch.
Oh yeah,
might be the best 1-2 punch in the Big Ten. You've been looking at the Big Ten. Ohio State, we like the Bo Jackson and Isaiah West, but that 1-2 punch in Michigan, I know Oregon likes theirs as well, and they've got a different kind of 1-2 punch with Jordan Davison and
Deer Hill.
Deer Hill, who is lightning.
Yeah,
I think there's some good ones. Do you think where is Michigan? Can they be that number 1-1-2?
That's number one for me.
Yeah.
I think Savion Hyder is, we talked a lot about David Gabriel George recently, but to me, I'd have taken David George by the width of a dime over Savion Hyder. Like, he is that good too. And that was, a huge acquisition by Tony Alford. And um, Jordan Marshall is a college back that I didn't really see coming out of high school. I thought he'd be good. He's better than I thought he'd be. But the two of those guys together, that's a load and a half to deal with, man. That is a load and a half to deal with. And then if you've got Bryce now also involved in the running game,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is just going to make the lanes and the windows and everything easier for him to throw the ball. And he can do it when there's not a whole lot going on. When things are like he needs it to be a little easier, I think. And now I think we're talking if they got an offensive line that's clicking, a pretty dangerous unit with obviously he's now got a quarterback coach. Okay. He's got Coy Detmer coaching him.
Mm-hmm.
This is a huge, huge thing compared to, let's be honest, Tony. I mean, I just now, after all this, looking back, like I thought it at the time that the coaching staff at Michigan under Sharon Moore was such a huge drop back from Jim Harbaugh. But now I almost think it was totally incompetent. And we really looked at this kid as a freshman playing without a quarterback's coach, a $13 million. It's crazy to me. When was he getting instruction? You know what I mean? So with this now, I think that it's just so much better. It's just got to be, when we look at the talent on the roster, we are now seeing how much of a difference coaches make when they come in and the roster's talented, how they can really turn it around faster, improve it fast,
Mm-hmm.
like faster than we've ever seen. So I think we could really see a pretty powerful offense out of them this year potentially.
Yeah, and they're still trying to find their 5 best offensive linemen. And Whittingham said they've got 9 or 10 guys that they think can do it. And one of those guys will be Andrew Babalola, the freshman who was hurt last year,
Mm-hmm.
but they really, really like. In terms of how is he learning to play quarterback? You can watch things and learn anything on YouTube now. Change a light bulb, fix a flat, play quarterback. And then you said you didn't see Jordan Marshall coming. You didn't see that happening. Neither did Tony Alford, or else he probably would have recruited him
That's
harder
right.
at Ohio State.
That's right.
So, fortunate there. Receiver wise, Andrew Marsh is great. I think he's going to be 1,000-yard receiver. JJ Buchanan that they got from Utah is 6'3", 215, hybrid receiver tight end that I think could do a lot of damage in the slot, kind of like Colston Loveland did for them. Jamie French comes over from Texas, hasn't done anything yet. So it's like, I kind of view him, I get like Mylan Graham, basically, where it's, there's recruiting rankings and potential, and Notre Dame's excited about him. Ohio State wanted him back at a price. Texas had to let some people go, but like, I'm not expecting much from Jamie French this year. I think the other 2 guys that I mentioned are going to be pretty darn good, though.
With you on the other two, Jamie French, to me, man, is a knucklehead, and I don't see him ever doing much of anything. So, no, I'm not seeing that. By the way, Bryce's best friend, he said, is Jamie French. So it all just kind of fits for me. It all fits.
Well, I mean, if your best friend is the quarterback, maybe you will be more busy as a receiver. It's not a
Yeah.
bad thing. Defensively, Kyle Whittingham talked about the defensive line that he likes. He's got 5 defensive ends and a bunch of defensive
Bless
tackles.
that edge, he said, Tone. We are
Yeah.
blessed that
And,
edge.
well, I mean, like Carter Meadows, he's a 5-star defensive end, just came in June, and they think he can play right away. It's rare for a guy to come in late and then be somebody that plays right away. JT Tuimoloau did it. Maybe Carter Meadows will do it. And like he might be starting out as their number 5 guy. John Henry Daly coming over from Utah following an Achilles tear last year. Is he going to be going 100% right away? Generally, people don't. But they've got other guys. The defensive line seems like they've always got guys. It's when they're special, and when they're special, really good is when they have NFL first rounders, and too early to know if they've got those this year for me.
Yeah, I'd say I'm with you. I think that I would lean towards John Henry Daly is a pretty impactful guy this year. But when we're talking about an injury like that, it's just a guess. We just don't know. But a hell of a competitor, and he's incredibly strong, super competitive. all the stuff, man, all the things. He's got all the right stuff. I would love if he was a Buckeye, but they got one in him. And then Carter coming in, he said he's up to 255 now,
Mm-hmm.
and he's a pretty special specimen of a dude. Obviously, the Buckeyes missing out on that recruitment and Luke Wafel within a month of each other, which was a big deal and a lot of talk as he goes to Michigan, Wafel to USC, and the Buckeyes get him back in the class of 2027. But we're looking at some really powerful, top tier edge rushers coming into the Big Ten that I don't think we're used to seeing these kinds come to the Big Ten. As Oregon brings in Rashad Streets as well, like we've got some of the dudes we're used to seeing like playing at Alabama and Georgia now in the Big Ten, and it's pretty interesting.
The back seven or back six or back seven, back eight for Michigan, they've got new linebackers. Troy Bowles returns.
Yeah.
They've got some transfers coming in, and they've got corner. They've got the returning corners. They bring in a corner from Utah to maybe be the nickel a little bit. The safeties, Rod Moore is good to go. Rod Moore said he's feeling better than he has in years, but as Kyle Whittingham said, that's a relative term. Bring in another transfer safety. They've got a lot of transfers, and not from big schools per se, from smaller schools that they're going to be relying on this year in the back end of their defense. And I've never been blown away by Jair Hill or Zeke Berry at corner. Jair Hill's good. He's not Will Johnson. He's not like some of their really good corners of the past, in my opinion. Like I don't know that there's much to make of their defense, and the name escapes me of the nickel that they brought over from Utah, but he ranked like bottom 10 PFF and missed tackle rate like last year. So that's something that he's got to get better at. Like overall, I think it starts up front, and if everything's good up front, that's great. The back of the defense, I'm very, very much wait and see.
I feel the same. The linebackers is where I'd be probably most concerned. I don't see a whole lot of anything. Like they're talking about Nathaniel Owusu-Batang, who was in last year's class, being a guy that I think that the Michigan fans voted him like that. They did a thing where they said who's the most important player of the year at 247 on the Michigan site, and he was number 15, ahead of all the rest of their linebackers. He had played 70 snaps last year. I mean, Bowles, Todd Bowles' son, like he was a really good recruit. Went to Georgia, was not good, and didn't fit in at Georgia. And before he transferred to Michigan, like I just don't see a whole lot of anything at linebacker.
No, and they're going to play a bunch of 4-2-5 and hoping the nickel back that I was having trouble with, Smith Snowden coming over from Utah. When there's just like not a lot returning, and like I said, just some smaller school guys coming in, and certainly some questions there. Special teams, who knows?
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll be fine, but some questions about the Michigan defense. I do think the offense, they could just lean on that running game and open it up through play action. So that will be interesting to watch. The schedule, though, road games at Ohio State and Oregon seem like those should be 2 losses. I see Oregon beating them in Ann Arbor. That's 3 losses. They could perhaps beat Oklahoma. They should beat Oklahoma. But I'm really interested to see what happens when Indiana comes to town, because that one will basically tell me, has Indiana surpassed Michigan for the foreseeable future, or are they on the same level?
Such an interesting game. I felt the same way as I was just talking about this. Like I said, like that one right there represents so much more than just that game. If Indiana can go into there and beat them, it almost feels like a bit of a changing of the guard.
Yep.
In the order of supremacy in the Big Ten. So they're obviously going to be scrapping for it. Do they get one win between their big 4 games of Oklahoma, Indiana, at Oregon, at Ohio State? Can they win one of those 4? If they do, they can go 9-3 and be a bubble team.
Mm-hmm.
If they can't, or they can't win those other games that they should, that they'll be favored in the rest of them, then I think it's a very unsuccessful first year after a 9-3 season with a horrific coaching staff.
Well, and really the most likely win is Oklahoma, which probably does the least for them in the playoff picture.
Mm,
They'd want to win against
yeah.
one of the Big Ten teams that are going to be more likely to be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I do think that might be a little bit of a shootout with Oklahoma and John Mateer running around and doing his thing, and Bryce Underwood running around doing his thing. Going to be a fun one, but I don't know how much we will be watching it as we're getting ready for the Texas game.
Yeah.
Moving to the recruiting side of things, the future of Michigan football. You've got Kyle Whittingham having to do something that he's never done, and that's recruit at a high level. I mean, and be expected to recruit at a high level. And he's a nice guy, and all of this, and money can do a lot for you, and we know that for sure. But you're not in Utah anymore. You can't operate like you're in Utah. You can't also just let the money cannon happen because you still have to build relationships. So you've got some holdovers, and you've got some from the assistant coaches, and you've got new assistant coaches. But overall, like, this is a class that he's inherited, essentially, the 2027 class, and it's not great. I think like 18th right now. But he has to do something, like I said, he's never done before. And he's operated on development and talent recognition. Like, I see this guy, and in 4 years he'll be able to play. You can't do that. There's no 4 years he'll be able to play. You've got to find guys and go get guys and work hard to go get them. And this is a head coach who stepped away. And so now it's like you've got to restart it. Is it still there? Is he ready to go? We know he's younger than his age. I'll say that. But also, can he keep up with everybody in all of the ways that need keeping up?
I got to tell you, Tony, when he said the other day that he was so re-energized, I mean, I'm just like, this guy was reminding me of like the Joe Biden memes. Like, what was he like before he was re-energized? I don't know, but he's always been kind of chill. I get that. But when I look at Whittingham and I look at the last 5 years, like, they've played BYU 3 times, lost all 3 times to BYU. In 4 of those 5 years, the first 4 lost 20 total games in those 4 years. 3 of them or 4 of them, they were all in the Pac-12. Then in the Big 12, no, 3 of them were in the Pac-12. Then in the Big 12, the first year they lost 7 games. Then last year, the only one of those 5 years out of the last 5 that they had a good year was last year. So, like, what Kyle Whittingham are we talking about here? What Kyle Whittingham program are we talking about here? We're talking about peak Kyle Whittingham because he has not been that in the past 5 years. And what have we been dealing with in the past 5 years? A whole different way of football, Tone. A whole different way of roster construction. So I'm supposed to believe now he's going to go up here and just get it all right when he's doing something like he's never done before? I hesitate. I hesitate to see the roster construction coming together smoothly here. And to your point, he's never recruited at a high level like this. I look at him and I look at Matt Campbell, and I'm seeing a lot of the same. Like, 2 top 100 players at Michigan. That's not good enough, man. It's just not good enough. Like, you need to be in the big time battles, like the Carter Meadows, like the Savion Hyder. They're not in on any of them. Why is that? I don't know. I can't answer that question, but they got themselves a 5-star kicker committed in 2027 or 2028. Sorry, at IMG, big one for them.
Well, and you look at the I think it's the 2027 class right now. They've got 2 of the top 10 players in Michigan committed in 2027, which is the same number as Oregon.
Yeah.
And they've got 2 of the top 11 through 20. They've got 2 of those guys. And so this isn't about a shallow class where it's like, well, of course, sometimes there are only 2 of the top 10 that you need in the state of Michigan. That's not necessarily the case this year. And so it's like, yeah, you understand losing a head coach, that's going to create issues with the recruiting class. So then he's got to pick up those pieces and not only just pick them up, but turn them into something that doesn't look like it's been glued together and taped together. It's like you've got to make it brand new. And I have concerns about that and his ability to do that. And when you're Matt Campbell still recruiting like you're at Iowa State. If Kyle Whittingham does the same thing, it's going to be a mistake. We were talking on the drive to Chicago or the drive back. Rich Rod did the same thing. He was recruiting like he was at West Virginia, and you can't do that, or else those are the programs that you're going to be competing. If you're competing against them in recruiting, that's the level that you're going to be competing on the field. You're going to be as good as those programs, and being Utah is not good enough in the Big Ten if you're Michigan, and being Iowa State sure as hell not good enough in the Big Ten if that's Penn State. And I'm with you. Both of those guys I have concerns about. With Whittingham, it's like the best probably of a bad situation.
Mhm.
But how long is he going to be around? What kind of transition does that then create? Is there a coach in waiting where that coach then does more in terms of the recruiting, and the coach in waiting never works? So do
No,
you avoid that entirely? Probably. And I'm sure Kyle Whittingham wants nothing to do with the coach in waiting because he just came from one.
just got replaced by one.
And exactly. So the transition to him and then from him, if it's like all in the span of 5 or 6 years, you're talking about a bunch of classes that are going to be impacted by a questionable recruiting attack, and certainly one that's going to suffer from all of the changes.
Yeah, yeah. I think what we're really going to learn a lot next year, like the
Mhm.
class of 2028. Like you said, like a lot of this, the hay was already in the barn. A lot of the relationships were already made, and they did do a good job on a couple of guys close in. I think the interesting thing when we talk about money is how they really thought that the Larry Ellison billions were just going to really
Mhm.
be funding this roster from Bryce Underwood on, and it feels like that was really just kind of a one-time deal for him. For his girlfriend was a shiny new quarterback.
Yeah, and you look at that 2028 class, you've got Donald DeBrone, 5-star quarterback from Detroit Cast Tech, who right now is maybe penciled in to Texas A&M. And it seems like if you're throwing money at quarterbacks, that he would be the sensible next guy in,
Yep.
from Bryce Underwood to him, and maybe there's a transition guy in there with Tommy Carr or something like that. But I don't even doesn't seem to be much there, and losing an in-state guy like that, and they've got other top 100 type guys in state as well, and it's still very early, but I'm interested to see what kind of strides he makes in state because Michigan is not a bad state. There's always 5 guys that a Michigan can use,
Hmm.
and what is going to be their success rate, their hit rate with those guys moving forward. And it would be good to see them get somebody committed here. Like I guess maybe within the first 2 months of the season, with some visits coming and unofficial visits, of course, with the 2028 guys. But like Oregon and USC don't have any commits yet in 2028, so it's like you can't panic because they're going to be just fine. I'd still would I guess it's too early to get too concerned about Michigan, but until we see something more from Kyle Whittingham, it's like what is the baseline? It can't be it can't be confidence, let alone overconfidence.
Yeah, yeah. And to be honest, I would have expected a little more energy with the new coach coming in and him being such a coach with such a resume. And I don't, and we know they do have money, but
Hmm.
they're not firing like they were with that top five, top six class. Uh, so going to be interesting to see for 28 for sure. But I think my gut instinct is we're not going to see. We're going to see a little bit of a regression. I mean, they recruited pretty good under Sharon Moore. That for all the mess that they had, and ultimately we'll see their evaluations. But as far as recruiting, they did well. They did pretty well.
Well, and yeah, and in 2026 they were 12, and they've had some good classes. I just wonder
25
if
was like
now,
top five, top six in the country.
right, and
Real good.
so like I wonder in the 2027 class right now is like 18. Feels like 18 might be the water level, I think, moving forward until they get more aggressive, and we'll see what happens with all of these retention pool and all of that and where all of the money is. But I don't see them recruiting like they did in the brief period with Sharon Moore. But then Michigan has never been an elite recruiting school. They've always been 8 to 15, something like that. And they've existed just fine with their 10 to 8 wins a year as we've grown accustomed to them. So the recruiting has been commensurate kind of with the success. And sometimes the graph goes a little high for who knows why. But anything else before we call it a day?
Yeah, I mean, looking into the future, if I was a Michigan fan, I think I would feel really, really lucky that you got Whittingham to kind of level things off, and you don't need to maybe clean it up and maybe be proud of the program. Remove yourself from the delusion that you've been going through for the past couple of years, and it's going to be some traditional Michigan football that who doesn't love traditional Michigan football? Like it's the kind of football they love to see. It's the kind of football I think most of us love to see too, and I think that they'll be pretty good at it. But as far as competing, being a winning playoff team, I don't think we're going to see that under Whittingham.
Well, and yeah, now I'm just wondering if the next coach will the timing fit for Bob Chesney, because he's not going to be at UCLA in 4 years, I would assume. And I'd say Kyle Whittingham probably gets at least 3 years to do what he's going to do. And I do wonder if at some point it's clear that Bob Chesney is leaving due to some success. If Michigan is like, Kyle, thank you for your service, but we're going to move on and we're going to go make an effort to go land Bob Chesney, who is one of the future stars of the business.
I think it's a fantastic spot to be in if you're Michigan. If Whittingham's winning you 8, 9, 10 games a year, and you're just kind of sitting there waiting for your pickoff point for that next dude, it's a really good spot to be in.
Yeah, so there you go. The next head coach of Michigan football, Bob Chesney, currently at UCLA. That's not tampering. That's just speculation. And he's going to be somewhere. We know that. So what are your thoughts? Who is the next head coach at Michigan? How is Michigan going to be recruiting? Just your thoughts on some of the villains and the killers in this rivalry. I'd be interested to hear you guys' thoughts on YouTube. And, of course, 5-star rating and review on the audio side is always appreciated. And as I say, the absolute best way to support what we do is to find us over at BuckeyeInsiders.com, become a member, and say hello to us there. So that will do it for this episode of The Time and Change. Will surely show. I want to thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys later.